नहीं मला ही नहीं दाखवत आहे.
Okay, everyone. So let's start. Okay, everyone is ready?
Yes.
Okay, so today we are going to talk about ancient history. So we'll be talking about the period that was before Christ. Okay, so the first and the foremost thing, the oldest civilization in India was the Harappan or the Indus civilization. Now the oldest name is Indus civilization. Now this civilization was called Indus civilization because it developed on the river banks of Indus river. Now the areas covered by this civilization were spread over Sindh, Baluchistan, Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan, Gujarat, Western UP. Now, though this civilization was at the time of 2500 BC to 1750 BC, the people in this civilization were quite advanced. Now, if we talk about the features of their cities, the first was that they had systematic town planning. They had a grid system. So the houses were made in a very systematic way. The lanes, the roads, they were all in a very systematic way. The second unique part about this civilization was that they used to use burnt bricks in their constructions, which is quite a development for them, because for them it was very difficult to know how to make bricks, what is the scientific property behind the construction of various materials, but they knew how to use bricks. The third and the foremost important thing was the underground drainage system. Now they had giant water reservoirs in Dholavira. Now this sewage system was quite modern, quite efficient, and this is something which people of that particular civilization knew. They knew how to make houses, how to plant towns, how to have sewage systems, etc. They also had the concept of fortified citadel. Now, if you look at various European cities, they also have similar front constructions. This means that you can seal the entire city from foreign invasion. So they had walls all over around the city, and so if suppose there was any attack, they could close the entire city and defend it. That is called as fortified citadel. Exception is Chanhudaro. Chanhudaro was the only place which did not have a fortified citadel. Now the main crops that was cultivated were wheat and barley. Now there is evidence of cultivation of rice in Lothal and Rangpur, that is Gujarat only. The other crops that were there were dates, mustard, sesame, cotton, etc. Now, what kind of questions you may get related to the Indus civilization or Harappan civilization? The first question that you may get is, what was the capital? The capital or the largest site was Mohenjo-daro. Okay, then you might be asked about their sewage system, about the construction. So it was one of the most sophisticated constructions and most sophisticated sewage plants. You might also be asked the areas where this civilization extended. So we have talked about Punjab, Sindh, and the other areas that are there. Now the animals that were there were sheep, goat, humped and humpless buffaloes, bull, boar, dog, cat, pig. So they basically had a very developed civilization. Now there was extensive inland and foreign trade. So you might be amazed to know that even during that time, they had the concept of foreign trade. Can you all hear me?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
I got a message from Rachel D'Souza and Yashashri that they can't hear me. Can you hear me, Yashashri and Rachel? Okay, let's continue. So even during that time, they had the concept of inland and foreign trade. Now the foreign trade used to happen with Mesopotamia or Sumeria, which is today modern Iraq, and even Bahrain, and it was very good trade. Now, moving to that period, from that 1750 BC till 1500 BC, when you come, there was the evolution of the Vedic culture. Now, Vedic culture is made by the Aryans. Now, whether the Aryans are native Indians or they have migrated from Central Asia is still debatable. It is believed that they came from Turkey and there were 4 Vedic gods. That was Indra, Varuna, Mitra, and Nasatyas. And this proves that the Central Asian theory is correct, that Aryans came from Central India. Now, the group that came to India first settled in the frontier province of Punjab and then called Sapta Sindhu, the region of 7 rivers. So, if you ask the question, where did the Aryans settle first in India? Sapta Sindhu, that is the region of 7 rivers. Now, Vedic literature was very, very popular and it is still popular. And the literary productions are first the Samhitas, that is the Vedas. The second is the Brahmans, the Arayankas, and fourth is Upanishads. Now, these names are very important. You might be asked, what are the literary productions? What is the oldest literary production, etc. So, first of all, about Vedas. They are also called as Aparashaya. Aparashaya means something which is not man-made. It is God-gifted and Nitya, that is existing in all eternity. So if you are told what was the other name of Vedas, that is Aparashaya. And Vedas are God-gifted and they exist in all eternity. Now there were again 4 types of Vedas. That was Rig Veda, Samaveda, Yajur Veda, and Atharva Veda. Ask what is the oldest Veda? That is the Rig Veda. It is a collection of lyrics, different shlokas or hymns. Okay. And this is also known as the first testament of mankind. If you're asked what is the first testament of mankind, then that is Rig Veda. Now, Samaveda is a book of chants. Rig Veda is a collection of lyrics. Samaveda is a book of chants. Then Yajur Veda is a sacrificial. Okay. Samaveda is a book of chants and Yajur Veda is a book of sacrificial prayers. And the Atharva Veda is a book of magical formula. So you remember the 4 Vedas and the meaning or what the Vedas contain. You might be asked those kind of questions. Now, let's go to the 2 Mahakavyas, that is epics during the Vedic period. The first is the Ramayana. Now, you might be asked the question, who wrote the Ramayana? It was Valmiki. Now, Ramayana is also called as the Adi Kavya and it is the oldest epic of the world. Okay. Now, we know the basic story. And this basic story, if you know the basic story, it might help you with the characters. So, Ram had 3 brothers, so there were 4 brothers in all. So you might be asked who were the brothers of Ram? Ram, Lakshman, Bharat, and Shatrugna. Then Ram had 3 mothers, Kaushalya, Sumitra, and Kaikai. On Kaikai's wish or desire, Ram took the Vanvas. Ram with Sita and Lakshman went for Vanvas of 14 years. Sita was abducted by Ravana. There was an important character, that is Hanuman. Then you might also be asked about Jatayu, which was a vulture. Then you might be asked who turned on Ravan, that is Vibhishan. Then there is a man who used to sleep for 6 months and who used to eat for 6 months, that is Kumbhakarna. So just get a brief idea about Ramayana. You might have access to online comics or anything, so you'll just get a basic idea. Then second one is Mahabharata. Now Mahabharata was written by Ved Vyas and it is the longest epic of the world. Now Mahabharata is very difficult to describe in short. So it has characters, it has hundreds and thousands of important characters. There are story within story within story. So it is impossible to explain. But Mahabharata is the base from which Bhagavad Gita has been extracted. Bhagavad Gita is a religious book of the Hindus. Now, Bhagavad Gita is being explained by Krishna, that is in Indian God, and it is being explained to Arjuna, that is who is one of the Pandavas. So, what you have to remember about Mahabharata is that it is the longest epic of the world, and Ramayana is the oldest epic of the world. Okay. Now, moving forward, now we will talk about the foreign invasions that happened in India. Now, the first foreign invasion was the Iranian-Persian invasion. Persia as a country today does not exist, but during that time, the area of Iran was also called as Persia. Now, there was a Achaemenian ruler, Darius, who penetrated the northwest India in 518 BC and annexed Punjab. So this is the first type of foreign invasion in India. Now, why is this foreign invasion important? Because Iran was a very big power during that time, and the other big power was Greek. So Greece and Iran used to fight for supremacy. So when Iran invaded India, Greeks thought, why not we also go to India and get all the wealth and power that is there? So after the Iranian invasion, there came Alexander's, that is Macedonian invasion by the Greeks in 326 BC. Now, you might be asked a lot about Alexander. Alexander is one of the most powerful men in the world. So, what happened during Alexander's time? In the 4th century BC, the Greeks and Iranians fought for supremacy. And under the leadership of Alexander of Macedonia, the Greek finally destroyed the Iranian Empire. Now, Alexander succeeded his father Philip to the throne of Macedonia. He was only 20 years of age. Does anyone know at what age did Alexander die? Anyone knows at what age did Alexander die? No? Okay. Alexander became king at the age of 20 years and he died at the age of 33. Now, from his childhood, he had a dream of world conquest. Now, when he came to India, he got Taxila and Abhisara very easily. They submitted before his power. But Porus did not. So what Alexander did was he crossed the Jhelum. Jhelum is the river in Kashmir. He crossed the Jhelum by trick and he defeated Porus. But Porus was a very, very brave and brilliant man. And because of that, even after his defeat, Alexander treated him like a king and he treated him very generously. Now, why did India lose to foreign invasions? Because one of the important elements was that there was disunity among the Indian kings. And after Alexander's invasion, they understood that we need to unify the Indian Empire to stay safe from foreign invasions. Now, Alexander wanted to stay in India and conquer more of India, but his army refused to go further than the area base. And that is why, after making administrative arrangements of conquered territory, he marched back in September 325 BC. Now, he reached Babylon in 323 BC and he died at the age of 33. Now, does anyone know where Alexander was buried? Okay, Alexander was buried in Alexandria, which is in Egypt. Now, Alexander's invasion opened up both the land and sea routes between India and Europe and brought them closer. Now it exposed India to all the other regions in Europe and Central Asia, where they thought that India is a rich country, and because of its disunity, it is open for capture. Now, after Alexander's invasion, let's go talk about religious movements. Now, during 600 BC to 400 BC, there were two religions which came into existence. One was Buddhism. Can anyone guess the other religion?
Hinduism.
Pardon?
Jainism.
So Buddha and Mahavira, they both were contemporaries. Buddha was born in 563 BC and Mahavira was born in 540 BC. Now let's talk about Buddha. Now, when Buddha was born, he was born as a prince. His father was a king. And when he was born, a saint predicted that either this boy will become a big king, an important king, or he would become an ascetic, that is a saint. He would leave everything and become a saint. So his father was very worried that his son would become a saint. So because of that, he closed all the doors of the palace and did not expose his son to any kind of bad event that might happen in a human being's life. Now he hid from his son that there is pain in the world, there is death in the world, there is old age, there is disease. These things were these things not known to Buddha till the age of 29. But at the age of 29, he renounced home and he became a wandering ascetic. Why? Because when he came out of the palace, he saw this man four sides. He saw four things. One, an old man. He saw a deceased person. He saw a dead body and an ascetic. And when he saw these things, he realized that human life is full of suffering. And he had the aim that I want to conquer this suffering. I want to be free of suffering. And that is why he renounced home and became a wandering ascetic. Now, his first teacher was Alara Kalama and his second teacher was Udraka Ramaputra. Now, he achieved enlightenment at the age of 35 after continuous meditation for 49 days under Uruvela or Bodh Gaya. So now you might be asked, what age did Buddha achieve enlightenment? So that is age of 35. Where did he achieve enlightenment? That is Uruvela or Bodh Gaya. On which river bank? That is Niranjana. And he came to be known as Buddha or Tathagat. Now, Buddha had many patrons. Bimbisara, Ajatshatru, Prasenjit. These are rulers. You might just go through it to know if you want to. Now, the greatest patron of Buddhism was Ashoka. We will learn about Ashoka in the later slides. But Ashoka was the greatest patron of Buddhism and he called Third Buddhist Council. He sent mission comprising of his son Mahendra and his daughter Sangamitra to Sri Lanka. So he was instrumental in sharing and promoting Buddhism in Sri Lanka. Now this person, Kanishka, he called the Fourth Buddhist Council and sent mission to China, Korea and Japan. So you might be asked the question that who sent the mission to Sri Lanka? That was Ashoka. Who sent the mission to China, Korea and Japan? That is Kanishka. Now you might also be asked about the certain names of important people in Buddha's life. First of all, when Buddha was a prince, his name was Siddhartha and his father's name was Sudodhana, who was a republic king of Kapilvastu. Now after his mother's early death, he was brought up by his stepmother and aunt Mahaprajapati Gautami. Now his father married him at an early age and his wife's name was Yashodhara. Now, there is similarity between Mahavir's life and Buddha's life. Buddha's wife's name was Yashodhara and Mahavir's wife's name was Yashoda. So, don't get confused between the two names. Now, Buddha had a son whose name was Rahul. Rahul means a serpent. Okay. Now, let's talk more about Mahavir's life. Now, Mahavir was born in 540 BC in a village, Kundragrama in Vaishali in Bihar. Now, his father's name was Siddhartha. Now, again, don't confuse. Buddha's earlier name was Siddhartha. Mahavir's father's name was Siddhartha. Mahavir and Buddha are not related at all. Okay. Mahavir's father's name was Siddhartha and he was the head of the Jnatrika Kshatriya. Kshatriya means warriors, the clan of Vaji, and Vaishali, Vaji of Vaishali, and his mother Trishala was a sister of Chetaka, the king of Vaishali. Now Mahavira was married to Yashoda. She was a daughter of the Samarvira king. Now they had a daughter whose name was Anunja Priyadarshini, and Anunja Priyadarshini's son Jamali became the first disciple of Mahavira. So you might be asked, who was the first disciple of Mahavira? Mahavira's first disciple is Jamali, who was his son-in-law. Now, at the age of 30, after the death of his father, he renounced his family and became an ascetic and proceeded in the search of truth. Now, you might be asked, at what age did Mahavira leave everything to become a saint or an ascetic? The age is 30. Buddha left home at the age of 29. Similarly, you might also be asked, what age did Buddha achieve enlightenment? Buddha achieved enlightenment at 35, whereas Mahavira attained Kaivalya. Kaivalya is another word for enlightenment. Kaivalya means supreme knowledge. Mahavira attained Kaivalya, supreme knowledge, at the age of 42 under a sal tree. Buddha got the enlightenment under Uruvela, that is Bodh Gaya, that is a people tree, whereas this person got the Kaivalya, that is supreme knowledge, under a sal tree, and the place name was Jambikagrama, and on the bank of the river Rijupalika. Bodh Gaya was on the bank of river Niranjana, and Jambikagrama is on the bank of the Rijupalika. So don't confuse between the two religions. Now, from now onwards, after enlightenment, Siddhartha came to be called as Gautam Buddha, and Mahavira after enlightenment was either called as Kevalin, that is perfectly learned, Jitendriya, that is one person who has conquered his senses, Nrigrantha, that is free of all bonds, Arhant, that is blessed one, and Mahavira, that is brave. So you might be asked the various names of Mahavira, that is Kevalin, Nrigrantha, Jitendriya, Arhant, and Mahavira. Now, the followers of Mahavira were called as Jain. That's how Jainism came into existence. Now he delivered his first sermon, that is speech, to Paval, to his 11 disciples. So the first sermon was given to 11 disciples, and they were called as 11 Gandharas or Gandharvas. And later he found the Jain Sangha, Jain commune. Now Mahavira died at the age of 72 in 468 BC, and he passed away at Pavapuri in Bihar Sharif in Bihar. Sudharma was one of the only 11 Gandharas who survived the death of Mahavira. Okay, now this I have given you a brief idea about the life of the two important religious movements, that is Gautam Buddha and Mahavira. Now what you should learn more is what were the elements of these religions, who were the other important people involved in the religions, how were these religions spread throughout India and the world. So these things you might be able to learn when I'll recommend you this book, where you will have more knowledge about the various elements that I'm talking about. In this lecture, it is impossible for me to go into very details. So I'll just expose you to the important elements, the important personalities, important periods. And then in the end of this lecture, I'm going to recommend you the book. I'll be showing you how you can download the book, and then you can just go through to revise and know more. Now we will talk about Chandragupta Maurya. Now Chandragupta Maurya, now the one thing that you need to understand is Chandragupta Maurya's dynasty is also called a slave dynasty. He was not a king by birth. He dethroned the last Nanda ruler, Dhanananda, and occupied Patliputra with the help of Chanakya or Kautilya. That's how he became king. Now, Chandragupta Maurya defeated Seleucus Nicator. This is a very important element. Seleucus Nicator was a Greek king, and he also happened to marry the sister of the Greek king. So the second wife of Chandragupta Maurya was Seleucus Nicator's sister. Now, Megasthenes was a Greek ambassador sent to the court of Chandragupta Maurya by Seleucus Nicator. Chandragupta became a Jain and went to Chandragiri hill. So if you are asked the religion of Chandragupta Maurya, he was a Jain. And he took Samadhi. Samadhi is a concept in Jainism where people give up life by starving themselves. So they give up food and water and they meditate continuously. And by every passing day, they lose the strength and in the end, they die by slow starvation. So it is also called as Kaya Klesha or Salekhan. Now, under Chandragupta Maurya, for the first time, the whole of northern India was united. Trade flourished, agriculture was regulated, weights and measures were standardized, money came into use. So barter trade was the most popular kind of trade. But now under Chandragupta Maurya, money came into use. So Chandragupta Maurya's period was also called as the Golden Age. Now, Chandragupta Maurya had a son, Bindusara. Now, there is an interesting story about the birth of Bindusara. Now, we all know that Chanakya was one of the best statesmen and he was very, very foresighted. So, what he thought was that if suppose somebody wants to kill the king, they might use poison to kill the king. So, what he used to do was every day in the food of the king, he used to put some amount of poison, because of which what used to happen was the king would ingest it, but the poison was in a very small quantity, so the king would not die of it, but the king would develop immunity to the poison. So every day when king consumed the little poison, he became immune to the poison, and that was the intention of Chanakya. But one day his heavily pregnant wife ingested the food instead of Chandragupta, and she had a very bad reaction and she fell off and she was almost dying. And at that time, they cut open her stomach and removed the child to save the child, and that child was Bindusara. So Chandragupta Maurya's wife did not survive, but his son Bindusara survived, and he succeeded Chandragupta Maurya to the throne. Now, Bindusara was known to the Greeks as Amithocrates. So this is also one question that might be asked, that who was Bindusara? He was a son of Chandragupta Maurya and he was also called as Amithocrates. Now Bindusara, now this is a small anecdote about Bindusara, that he asked Antiochus of one of Syria to send some sweet wine, dried figs and a sophist. A sophist means a social philosopher. Now Antiochus sent wine and figs, but he said that Greek philosophers are not for sale. Now, Bindusara patronized Ajivikas. Now, this is also an interesting part, that his father was Jain and Bindusara patronized Ajivikas. Now, Ajivikas is the sect formed by Gosal. He was a partner of Mahavira when Mahavira became an ascetic, but because of difference of opinion, they both separated and Gosal founded another sect which is called as Ajivikas. So remember, Chandragupta Maurya was Jain, Bindusara patronized Ajivikas, and Ashoka, he patronized Buddhism. So all the three generations had different religious beliefs. Now let's talk about Ashoka. Ashoka is one of the greatest king ever in India, but the journey to the throne was very bloody one. Now Ashoka was the son of a maid. His mother was not a queen, she was a maid. And when Ashoka was born, his mother was very happy to have a child, and she said that I am Ashoka, that is without sorrow. And that's how his name was. Is somebody trying to say something? Can everyone hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay. So let's talk more about Ashoka. Now, Ashoka had many brothers, and to become the king, he had to kill 99 of his brothers, and he spared only one brother, Tisa, that is the youngest one. Now, Radha Gupta, minister of Bindusara, helped him in this fratricidal struggle. Fratricidal struggle means the act of killing his own brothers. When you're killing your own siblings, that is called as fratricide. Now, this war of succession accounts for interregnum of 4 years. So, after the death of Bindusara, for 4 years there was no king on the throne of uh, Chandragupta. Sorry, on the throne. After 4 years, finally Ashoka became the king, formally crowned in 269 BC. So you should remember certain dates as well, that when did Ashoka become king? That was in 269 BC. Now, under Ashoka, Mauryan empire reached its climax. Ashoka believed in physical occupation of lands to increase his territory, and because of which he went into many wars against many neighboring kingdoms. One wars was against Kalinga, and that was in 261. That was the ninth year of his coronation. Now, the massacre, the war was such a bloody war that it moved Ashoka deeply, and he realized that what he was doing was very wrong and very bad, and because of which he became a pacifist. So he did take Kalinga into his empire, but then he realized that now he should conquer other regions not through physical occupation but through culture. And that's when he adopted Buddhism and took a pledge to promote Buddhism, spread Buddhism all over the world and India. Now, Ashoka sent missionaries to the kingdoms of Cholas, Pandyas, and the 5 states ruled by the Greek kings. One second. And he spent it to Syria, Egypt, Antigonus, Macedonia. Macedonia is Greece, Cyrenia, and Epirus. Now he also sent missionaries to Ceylon, that is Sri Lanka, and Burma, and also some parts of South Asia. Now, anyone, any questions about this? Any questions till now? No questions? Okay. Now I'll show you from where you can download the book, from where I've got the material. On your phone or on your laptop, go to pdfdrive.com. Search for Lucent's General Knowledge India. Lucent's General Knowledge India. Search for it. Now you will get two books. One is from 2015 and one is from 2018. Go for the 2018 version. Download it. Now I'll show you what is there in the book. So here you can find all the details about Vedic culture. One second, I'm trying to find the Gupta period. That is something that we need to do now. Yeah. So Gupta period is again another important period in Indian history. So after Ashoka, there were many other kings, but then after the Mauryan period came the Gupta period. Now in the 4th century AD, a new dynasty, the Guptas, arose in Magadha and established a large kingdom over the greater part of northern India. Now the period is referred to as classical age or the golden age of ancient India. So if you are asked which period is considered as the golden age of India, then that is Gupta period. Now the Gupta was succeeded by his son Ghatotkacha, who also inherited the title of Maharaja. Now the first ruler of Gupta ruler was Chandragupta I. Now you need to understand that Chandragupta Maurya was from the Mauryan period and Chandragupta I was from the Gupta period. So those two are separate people. Now he was the first Gupta ruler to assume the title of Maharaja the Raja. Now he strengthened his kingdom by matrimonial alliance with the powerful family of Lichavis, who were the rulers of Mithila. And his marriage to Lichavi princess Kumara Devi brought him enormous power, resources, and prestige. Now he started the Gupta era in 319 to 320 AD. So now we have come into the from before Christ, we have come to an AD period. Now Chandragupta Chandragupta I started the Gupta era. Now at that time his coins had the Chandragupta I and Kumari Devi type. So they had the inscription of these people's faces on the coins. Now after him came Samudragupta. Now Samudragupta was the greatest king of the Gupta dynasty. Okay, according to Prayaga one second. Yeah, according to Prayaga Prasati, he was a great conqueror in the Gangetic Valley and Central India. Samudragupta annexed territories and of defeated monarchs. Now Samudragupta's military campaigns justified description of him as the Napoleon of India by V.A. Smith. Now, does anybody know about Napoleon Bonaparte? Napoleon Bonaparte was a French general and he also had the idea of being a world conqueror, and he annexed a lot of territory in Europe. And Samudragupta, because he was one of the greatest kings and he annexed a lot of parts of India and expanded his kingdom, he was referred to as the Napoleon of India by V.A. Smith. So if you are asked who was called the Napoleon of India, that is Samudragupta. The reference to his dominion over Java, Sumatra, Malaya Island in the sea shows that he had a navy. So Samudragupta also had a navy. Now his greatest achievement was a political unification of most of India, or Aryavarta, into a formidable power. Aryavarta means India, that is the place of Aryans. Now, during his time, the original type of gold coins were Garuda type, that is Dhanurdhari, archer, axe type, Ashwamedha type, etc. Now, after him came Chandragupta II, that is Vikramaditya. Now, according to Devi Chandragupta, Samudragupta was succeeded by Ram Gupta. Now, it seems Ram Gupta ruled for a very short period. He was the only Gupta ruler to issue copper coins. So, if you are asked who was the Gupta ruler to issue copper coins, he was Ramagupta. Now, Ramagupta was called a important king and agreed to surrender his queen Dhruva Devi to Saka invader. But Prince Chandragupta II, the younger brother of the king, resolved to act in the guise of the queen with the view to kill the hated enemy. So now this is also an important part where Ramagupta as a king, he did not fight for his queen or his country and was ready to give up his wife. But Chandragupta II or Vikramaditya, he said that I will go in the place of the queen and I will kill the enemy. Now Chandragupta II, one second. You all cannot hear me? Hello?
We can.
Yes, we can.
We can hear you.
Yeah, you can, right? So I got a message from Om Dhumal that he can't hear.
Yes, miss.
Okay.
Miss.
Now Chandragupta
Miss.
II, pardon? Now Chandragupta II succeeded.
Miss.
Yes.
Miss, can you increase your volume? I can't hear properly.
Okay, I'll try to speak louder. So Chandragupta II succeeded in killing the Saka ruler. So he killed the invader as well. He killed his own brother Ramagupta and he seized the kingdom. But he also married his widow Dhruva Devi. Now Chandragupta II extended the limits of the empire by matrimonial alliances. So at that time, it was okay for Indian kings to have multiple marriages. So through matrimonial alliances with Nagas and Vatakas and conquest, he expanded his territory. He married Kubar Naga of the Naga dynasty and married his daughter Prabhavati Gupta with Vataka prince. Now, as a result of the overthrow of the Saka rule in western region, the Gupta Empire extended up to the Arabian Sea. Now, let's talk about the next ruler. So, at that time, there was Navratna. We'll talk about Navratna as well. So, at that time, during Chandragupta II's rule, Navratna, that is 9 gems of Chandragupta II. So, there was Kalidasa. Kalidasa was a part of the Navratna of Chandragupta. So if you are asked during what period was Kalidasa born into or what period was Kalidasa Navratna, he was during Chandragupta II's period. Then Kalidasa was into poetry. Then there was Amar Sinha. Then there was Dhanavantri. And there were others, but the most important one is Kalidasa. Now after him came Kumaragupta I. Chandragupta II was succeeded by his son Kumaragupta. Towards the end of his reign, the Gupta Empire was threatened from the north by the Huns, who were temporarily checked by his son Skandagupta. Kumaragupta was the worshipper of god Kartikeya. Okay. Then you have Skandagupta. So these are not those very important kings. The most important king was Samudragupta and then Chandragupta II. Any questions till now?
Yes, ma'am. One question.
Yeah.
The years which are written in the book, are they the years that how much they ruled or how much they lived? Example in Khandagupta 450 to 467. So it is the
This is
the
their
time he
ruling.
ruled?
This is the ruling period when they were
Okay.
the kings or the sovereigns.
Okay.
So whenever next to a king you are given a time period, is normally the time period of their rule or their monarchy. So when always next to the king you have the ruling period.
Okay.
Now we'll talk. Now you can, when you download the book, you can read through the administration as well and the society. Now there was a Varna system in India, so you can learn more about the Varna system. There were Kshatriyas, Brahmins, Vaishyas and other types of sects, and in which period what kind of casteism prevailed, that you can learn more. Then there were also a lot of cultural influences. A lot of Indian buildings came from the Greek culture. So a lot of influences were religions as well as the foreign invasions and foreign relations. So you can go through the economy, the culture, what type of coins were prevalent during that time, etc. Now there is this argument during the Gupta period. Gupta period is called as the golden age of India. So now there has been a debate whether it's a reality or a myth. So now the pros or the positive arguments for it is that at that time there were political units, foreign rule was completely removed and there was peace and prosperity during Gupta period. Then there was enlightened character of government. That means that the government had very light taxes and punishments were mild. So people were free to live the life they wanted. There was revival of Hinduism, but there was also tolerance towards other religions. Sanskrit developed, art and literature flourished. There was great personage like Kalidasa, Amar Sinha, Dhanavantri, and Aryabhatta, etc. Aryabhatta was also during this period. So everything was very good. But then there are some negative aspects of golden age as well. So the first thing was there were too many feudatories. That is, there were too many noble lords. So because of that, the king was also controlled by the noblemen. The noblemen controlled the armies. There was absence of a central rule. Now, what happens is when there is a nobleman, there are feudal lords. What happens is the army and the territories are controlled by the respective feudalmen. For example, territory A is from feudalman A, territory B is from feudalman B. So if the king wants to take any decision, king wants to take any action, he needs the approval of all the feudal lords. If he wants to go into war, he needs the approval and support of the feudal lords, then only he'll have adequate army. So that was there, which was not a very positive sign. Then because of feudal elements, there were a lot of lands were granted to the feudal lords and there was serfdom. Serfdom means that people were treated as bonded labor. So if a land belongs to a particular person, then all the workers also belong to that particular person. So that was bad. Then there was decline of trade and guilds. So the trade declined, which is not a very good sign for the economy. There was decline of urban centers. So there were more rural areas. There was not much modernism during that time. And there was a lot of discrimination, Varna distinction, and also there was decline in the status of women. So there were some good pieces, good things in the Gupta period, but there were also some negative elements in the Gupta period. So golden age of ancient India, not whether it's a myth or not, a reality, we don't know yet. But if you are asked what was the golden age, then it is the Gupta period. Okay. So now there is more stuff that is post Gupta period, Vardhana dynasty, etc. But they are not as important. So you can go through that if you want to, but it's not the most important part of the ancient history. Now in the next class, we will go for medieval history. At that time, we learn about Akbar, Qutbuddin Aibak, Jahangir, Shah Jahan, Aurangzeb, etc. Okay. Any questions till now?
No, ma'am.
Any questions? Okay, let me ask questions to see whether you remember stuff or not. Which is the oldest epic of India?
Ramayana.
And which is the longest epic of India?
Mahabharata.
Okay. Which is the oldest literature? Which is the oldest Veda in India?
Rigveda.
Okay, correct. Correct. At what age did Buddha achieve enlightenment?
35.
Okay.
35.
Who was the first disciple of Mahavira?
Jamali.
His son-in-law.
Okay, Jamali is the correct answer.
Jamali.
In Jainism, supreme knowledge is called as what?
Jamali.
Okay, in Jainism, supreme knowledge.
Kaivalya.
Correct.
Kaikai.
Kaivalya is the right answer. What are the other names of Mahavira?
Kaivalya.
What are the other names of Mahavira? Okay. Who was the greatest Gupta king? Who was the greatest Gupta king?
Chandragupta.
Gupta too.
Samudragupta. Samudragupta is the right answer.
Samudragupta.
What was the religion of Chandragupta Maurya?
Jainism.
What was the religion of Ashoka?
Jain.
Buddhism.
Buddhism.
Which
Buddhism.
war changed Ashoka's views and made him a Buddhist? Which war? Which war changed Ashoka into a Buddhist?
No idea, miss.
Kalinga war. Kalinga, not Kalingar. Kalingar means watermelon. Kalinga war. Okay. What is the capital of Harappan civilization?
Mohenjo-daro.
Mohenjo-daro.
Okay. Fine. Who Kalidasa was a Navratna in which king's kingdom?
Chandragupta
Chandragupta too.
Chandragupta II is also called as? His name starts from V.
Aditya.
Vikramaditya. Correct. So I think whatever we have
Vikramaditya.
discussed, I think you are very
Vikram.
familiar with whatever was discussed. Just whenever you get time, every day 45 minutes, take the time and read the book that I have recommended you. You will get a lot of facts, a lot of information. And by the end of the
Yes,
third
miss, okay.
session of history, I will also give you a book where you can practice quiz questions. So there also
Yes,
you will
miss.
get to learn a lot of things. So today we'll wind up now. Okay, enjoy your
Okay,
day.
miss.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
ma'am.
Thank you, teacher.